Welcome to Who Knows Souls. I'm your host, Joe Chapp, and today I got to talk about something that I kind of wasn't expecting, but I just had to come to it. You've seen Ra-St.Brown, Jamison Williams. You've seen all the wide receivers in California. Jared Goff is throwing to them. It leads me to believe something that I don't think is really, I don't think people really put an emphasis on. Okay, I know people are detractors of Jared Goff. Okay, I know he doesn't have the strongest arm. That's established. I know he's not mobile. That's established. I know he's not this Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Superman. It's just not the way he is. When I look at Jared Goff and when I look at what they did going to California, throwing all the wide receivers there, I seen Josh Reynolds, I seen all the wide receivers, Jameson Williams, Ra-St.Brown. Great to see. But the one thing that I take away from that is the leadership of Jared Goff. Now, let me explain this to you really quick. It's one of the most overlooked things in sports is a guy who is a leader. You can have a quarterback who is immensely talented. He is an immensely talented quarterback, one of the best in the league. And matter of fact, he's been in your division for 13 years. Aaron Rodgers, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. There's one problem. When he didn't show up to training camp on time, and the wide receivers that they had that were rookies, Christian Watson, Romeo Dubs, he had a whole new wide receiver core. He didn't have he lost Devontae Adams to the Las Vegas Raiders. And he shows up late to training camp. That's not leadership. Leadership is coming in and doing the work and getting your team ready to play. You see what Tom Brady does with his wide receivers. They would always go and throw, and that's what Jared Goff is doing. You see quarterbacks do that, and it really pays off dividends because, listen, as much as we like to say it, you could have the strongest arm, you could have the most, you could have mobility of Lamar Jackson, you could be a, you could be Josh Allen, where you have both. But the issue though is timing. Like it's one of the major things that people don't look at. And like you look at the timing of routes. You see that Jameson Williams pass that Jared Goff threw to him, and it was a little bit short. Sometimes that is on timing. Now we can argue, does Jared Goff have the arm to get it to Jameson Williams? I've seen him uncork balls deeper than that. I'm pretty sure it was just the speed factor that he wasn't weighing into the contest because he barely had time to work with this guy, and he comes in mid-season. So what I love to see is Jamison Williams there, Ra-St.Brown there, Josh Reynolds there, guys that are in the fold that he's trying to connect with, not on a football basis, but trying to know them as a player, what their tendencies are, and that's the major thing. You look at pro sports across the spectrum. There's some players that, like, if you give them the ball at a certain point, they will make the other team pay. Like if you give Steph Curry a wide open three in the corner or on the logo, he's gonna drill it. You give Giannis Antetokounmpo, you give him a pass to the basket, he's gonna make it. LeBron James, same thing. You give Alexander Ovechkin a slot shot, a shot on the perimeter on the face-off circle, he's gonna score. I think it's the most overlooked thing that people aren't really looking at. And I know a lot of people want a quarterback. There's a few of you out there. Um, this is why I'm not for a quarterback. I don't think the Lions need a quarterback. I think that they're building something that is really, really special. And I think Jared Goff is a part of that. Obviously, you would love to have a guy like Patrick Mahomes. You would love to have a guy that just was worldly, like just an unbelievable beast. The reality, though, is like you look at the NFL and the quarterbacks. How many teams need a quarterback? How many teams would take Jared Goff right now? There's probably a few. You probably have one of the better quarterbacks in the NFC. So I know a lot of people are looking at it like, okay, You know, he doesn't have a strongest arm. He doesn't have, you know, the mobility that we would love to see. But there's one thing you're missing. Jared Goff is a total leader. And this is an example of it because obviously a quarterback kind of leads the ship in saying, "Let's go throw at the old high school or let's go throw somewhere." You know, that's usually how it's done. You don't have an Aaron Rodgers, a guy that's just going to show up to camp and be lazy and not put the work in with his wide receivers. Football is all about timing. The routes are all about timing. The instincts are all about the connections that they have between the quarterback and the wide receiver. We've seen it with Amon-Ra St. Brown, how Jared Goff and him have it. They have instincts towards each other, where like Jared Goff knows where Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to be every single time. You know, we seen when Josh Reynolds came into the fold for the Detroit Lions, we seen Josh Reynolds really elevate what the Lions were before they had Josh Reynolds. They were pretty much they were a horrible unit. But now you're starting to see with the more talent that's coming around Jared Goff, that he's starting to make things happen. And when you listen, I don't really fault the first year for him because let's be honest, that first year that he had it was a total shit show. You know, he didn't have part of his offensive line. Decker, Ragnow, they were out. He didn't have we didn't know who Amon-Ra St. Brown was until like late in the season. So I think it's critical to know for people. Jared Goff is a total leader. And I know people don't like to look at it this way, but you have to. He's a great quarterback for this franchise, and he's a great leader for this franchise. And sometimes leadership is something you really can't replace. Sometimes leadership comes from a quiet guy who just puts the work in. You know, I know people looked at Jamal Williams and they were like, this guy is the culture of the locker room. What if it's Jared Goff? Like, what if that offense really gravitates around Jared Goff? You don't have to be the loudest person in the room to be a leader. The person that is a leader that works his ass off, shows what it means to be a true professional. And listen, there was a guy that played for the Red Wings that was he was a prime example of you don't have to speak up to be a great leader. Actually, there was a few of them. Steve Eisman, Henrik Zetterberg, Nick Lidstrom, just to name a few. Look at the Pistons. I mean, obviously you had the brash Joe Lambier and Joe Dumars, but Isaiah Thomas, he's probably a leader behind the background. This is what is kind of overlooked with Jared Goff, is his leadership. I don't think I could put that more in a better perspective because I really think that Jared Goff is a tremendous leader, and I think it's something that you guys shouldn't overlook. What do you think below? Let me know in the comments. I'll answer your comments, and we'll have a little party in the comment section. I'll see you in the next video.